Hello folks, we have just completed Dark Souls 3 including all the DLCs for the first time, and fresh off finishing the game, I'm gonna try and rank the bosses. Rank them in a tier list. We should talk about the scoring system as well. It's about fighting, right? It's about difficulty, it's about movement set, it's about the enemy design. But also on top of that, I think about the lore. I think about the music of the fight, if I remember it. If I remember, I try and think about the arena that we fought in. So that is everything that I will include in my ranking. Okay, so I'm just gonna go in order here. And Abyss Watchers feels like an S tier boss for me, and I'm going to say this right at the top so that you know what kind of a person you're dealing with. My favorite boss fights in Dark Souls games are against humanoid enemies who have a weapon that I can dodge, and if it's possible, during the enemy's moveset, during the enemy's combos, if I can get a hit in, if there is a window for me, it's just one swing to get a one swing in. I love those types of fights. So Abyss Watchers, very cool lore. I think pretty good music if I remember correctly. The arena that we fight in, maybe not that interesting, but I was quite surprised. I remember vividly my first attempt. I was quite surprised that there were, in first phase, that there are 3 enemies that sort of fight against each other, fight amongst themselves. I did like their fighting style that is maybe somewhat similar to Artorias. Any boss or any enemy that has a connection to Artorias will get points in my book, because that is still one of the better characters in maybe all of Dark Souls 4. Loved Artorias, loved everything surrounding Artorias. The second phase is very cool. I think I like the bosses that have flames on them. It's just a rule of cool. Flames look cool in games. I'm not gonna go against flames. I'm not gonna be the guy that will say, flames. No, actually, they suck. First try today, folks. First try today. Woo! I'm no longer stuck in the torture chamber, by the way. I escaped the torture chamber. Thank you to everyone who watched. Oh, fuck, that was good. That was a good fight. So Abyss Watchers, again, took me around like 10... a little bit more than 10 attempts. I think the difficulty is fair. It's hard, but just like the best fights, it's a dance between you and Abyss Watchers. Definitely S tier. However, within the S tier, they might not be the best. Let's hold off on that. Next up is Aldrich. Feels like a good B tier. Interesting move set. I like that he rains, like the attack where he rains down, well, sort of arrows on you pretty much everywhere on the map, everywhere in the area, in the fighting area. It was fun. A mix between this sort of grounded humanoid monster and a mage is a little bit unique in Dark Souls. I think not a lot of bosses are sort of a combination of both. I like the design. The lore is very cool, having him, consume Gwendolyn, the Devourer of Gods, Devourer of Flesh, sort of a cannibal even. Can't quite remember the music. And it did take me, I didn't find the fight that difficult. It took me a couple of attempts to defeat Aldrich. Okay, this is not the end. This is not the end. This is the end. This is the end. My only friend. You guys know that, the Door song? I genuinely expected a second phase with like a cinematic. So B tier feels appropriate for him. Let's move on. Ancient Wyvern, D. I'm not gonna go long about this. It's a gimmick boss. The only nice thing I could say about this, the animation where you actually execute the dodge and the kill, the actual animation is pretty fun. That was a boss fight? What? How is that a boss fight? That's such a fucking gimmick, dude. One of the bosses that I think I'll forget the quickest after this playthrough. Okay, Champion Gundyr. Interesting. So I think... Oh, no, there are 2 Gundyrs. Champion Gundyr is A for a couple of reasons. If I'm talking about the lore, I think I have to include Iudex Gundyr here as well, because I'm talking more on his part, him being the gatekeeper, him being the first boss you have to defeat to sort of, progress further, to show your worth as a player and as a character. That is a very cool detail. And Champion Gundyr, why am I putting him in S tier? He, besides Friede, he might have been the second hardest boss for me specifically, because the way I like to play against bosses, to fight against bosses, is to keep as close to them as possible. And Gundyr had this little kick, or that shoulder check, that consistently bumped me off of him, and I had a hard time keeping close to him. That's why I died maybe 30 times to him. So in terms of difficulty, for me it was a difficult boss. I really liked his moveset, because as I've said, the kick and the shoulder check, it sort of reminded me of a fighting game character, like a street fight character, less of a Dark Souls boss, which I think is kind of unique, and also definitely my vibe. The area, especially for Champion Gundyr, kind of cool. I don't remember the music, to be fair. That was a good ass fight. That was a good ass fight. Why didn't I gain any souls? There we go. That was a good ass fight. Jesus Christ. A-tier boss, Gundyr, totally fucking kicked my ass. S-tier. And actually, just for now, I'm gonna put him above Abyss Watchers. Moving on. Easy D-tier. The Wolf and the Gravetender. Didn't like the Wolf part of the fight. Didn't like the Gravetender part of the fight. The music didn't stood out to me. Difficulty wasn't high, meaning the fight wasn't hard. If there was any interesting lore, I probably missed it. D-tier. I'm not gonna think too much about it. Crystal Sage, also D-tier, but slightly above both the previous bosses in the D-tier. The first, is it the first mage boss you fight in DS3? I think it could be, but it's not a very impressive boss fight. It's not a difficult boss fight. The magic attacks also didn't stand out that much to me. Music, completely no recollection. D-tier sounds. Curse Rotted Greatwood. Okay, so we are just stacking up the D tier. Okay, yeah, let's stick with D tier for Greatwood. More of a gimmicky boss. The arena I did like. Okay, so maybe the best part of that fight is when you fall through the ground for the first time. Like, that is a genuine shock. I remember fighting him and just going, whoop, I guess that happened. At first, I think I didn't even realize that was intentional. I thought that I was going to die from fall damage, but I didn't. I'm dead. Fuck you. Oh no. Oh, that was intended, wasn't it? Hitting those little balls everywhere around his body. Again, sort of gimmicky. It took me some time to figure out, but I think I got it pretty quickly. Didn't take me a lot of attempts. Not that hard of a fight. I couldn't tell you anything about the music lore. As far as I know, either non-existent or I didn't catch it. D tier, it seems like where he belongs. Dancer of the Boreal Valley, easily S tier, and also the best amongst the current S tiers. Let's see if Dancer ends the video as the best boss in the game, personally, for me. So why is it the best boss? I have to note this. I defeated Dancer, I think, pretty quickly after Deacons and Abyss Watchers. So I was slightly underleveled. One person asked me to fight Dancer earlier in the game, and I did. Why did I like the fight? Very good music, very fun music. I can hear it right now. While I'm talking, it's playing in the background. I like the lore, her being sort of abused by Pontiff Sulyvahn and being turned from a dancer into fighter. Very cool. I like the design. I like the outfit that she has. Her attacks, especially in the second phase with 2 swords, very cinematic. Good movements, good moveset. There's a good rhythm to the fight. In addition to her music, I can hear the way she breathes. Like when she would exhale, like that's one of the first sounds that comes to mind when I'm trying to think about Dancer of the Boreal Valley. I did not see her health. I legitimately did not see her health. I thought she had so much more health to go. Oh, holy shit. Okay. I got so surprised when she died. Like, legitimately. Holy shit, my heart is beating. Oh. Definitely a steer. Definitely the best boss. Also took me maybe 30 attempts total to defeat her. Big thumbs up. Darkeater Midir. I think this might be my hottest take. In general, I am out on dragons. Darkeater Midir was a fight that I think was slightly overhyped for me. I didn't find it engaging, personally. Obviously, this is my own opinion. I just spent a bunch of time underneath the boss. I got the comments that this is not the way you're supposed to fight him, and I did miss out on a lot of his Godzilla-like beam attacks. I did have a couple of attempts. It took me maybe 10 attempts to beat him. And a couple of those attempts were where I spent more time outside of his immediate range. So I got to see pretty much all of his attacks. But as I've said earlier, all of my favorite fights are against humanoids with weapons, and fighting big beasts is just not something I click with, although the music was very good and the lore was terrific as well. Him being one of those immortal dragons that got tasked with eating the darkness. Very interesting, very cool. Finally, thank you, Jesus Christ. Oh, yay, I won! Whee! Look how happy I am. I hope I don't come off as too big of a hater of Midir, but personally, he just doesn't stack up that highly to me compared to other bosses. Deacons of the Deep. Alright, so I'm thinking about, they're probably high D tier. Interesting gimmick, a unique boss, which as I'm saying right now, I might put Deacons on C tier, but very low C tier. Not a hard fight. I defeated, I think, Deacons on my first attempt. But as I've said, figuring out the fight, this sort of felt almost like a strategic battle where you have to, or more of a battle with puzzles, where you have to understand what's happening and what you need to do. But once you do, I think a lot of the charm of this fight just kind of evaporates. I think the music was quite nice though, and the lore of the Deacons also quite strong. Anything connecting that part of the game like Deacons and Pontiff Sulyvahn, very, very strong. Continuing with the ranking, Demon Prince, C tier. Interesting lore, just the fact that they were the last of the demon royal bloodline that connects with the Isolate part of the game from DS1. I think the fight is like very quick. It's a fight against two bosses. I wouldn't say it's a hard fight, but it took me a couple of attempts, maybe 2 or 3, but I might have gotten lucky because it felt very perilous. The fight somehow felt very dangerous. Maybe it's the fact that there's 2 of them, but ultimately I didn't have too much trouble with it. The fighting arena also adds a couple of points since we are fighting, if I remember correctly, what was the Firelink Shrine from the first game. So in the middle of C tier seems appropriate. Okay, so what about Dragonslayer Armor then? C tier, and I'll tell you why. It's one of the few tracks where I remember the music very well, and I kind of thought to myself, and I think I even said it out loud while we were fighting the Dragonslayer Armor, this music is like way too good for seemingly not that important boss. This was the best boss theme in the whole game, so that's gonna earn a couple of points. I don't remember the lore besides the cool fact that he was being piloted by one of the butterflies that was flying around it. Very cool concept. The moveset wasn't that interesting. The fight wasn't that hard, I would say. The fighting arena was kind of boring, plain, very plain looking. So somewhere in the higher C tier feels right. Later, alligator! Whoop-ha! Although I might make some adjustments later on. I feel like Midir and Dragonslayer Armor might be upgraded to B tier, because B tier is looking quite shallow at this point. Halflight, easily D tier. I didn't like the gimmick about fighting player. This basically comes down to RNG. How a lot of people felt about Bed of Chaos in Dark Souls 1, I think I feel this way about Halflight. You basically are dependent on how strong the enemy player that will get summoned. I think, the same player 3 times in a row. He absolutely kicked my ass. Another player kicked my ass maybe 2 times. And my final win, you know what it was? A player that was disconnected. He just stood there while I beat him down. So yes, that didn't give me a good impression of the boss. Everything else surrounding it, I think the lore is kind of cool. Halflight being the spear of the church, the defender of the church, but I didn't appreciate the gimmick, so D tier it is. First version of Iudex, C tier. I didn't like the second phase with the Puss of Man. I did like the lore, but I'm not gonna repeat myself. Already talked this while we were talking about Champion Gundyr. Moveset is worse than Champion Gundyr. Kind of think that both of these bosses should be combined. They shouldn't even be ranked separately. Okay, Lothric and Lorien. Feels like a good A tier. Good music, good design. I like the movement set. I like the concept of the fight, of them both having like disabilities and the younger prince being carried on the shoulders of an older prince. The teleportation was fun, and the lore, I think maybe the best lore in the game, or at least the most extensive lore. Throughout the majority of the game, I actually thought Lothric and, well, the Prince of Lothric was going to be the final boss of the game. Everything pointed towards that. So not only is the lore pretty good, there's a lot of it. The gimmick in the second phase where Lorien heals the older brother. I think that would have hit harder if I struggled with the fight more and if I had more attempts. Because why this boss doesn't reach the S level for me is I think I first timed or maybe second timed the boss. It didn't pose a challenge on me, so it's not going to leave that big of a memory. A tier feels right. Nameless King. Also A tier. But from my understanding, other people had more trouble fighting the Nameless King. It wasn't that big of a challenge for me. Some of people that watched me fight him would say that that was because of the wind blades. I did have wind blades leveled up, so it made the fight definitely easier. But also, I think the way I fought him in the second phase especially is that I kept closer to him, as close to him as possible. And I really enjoyed that fight, but he didn't have a lot of ways, I think, to shake me off of him. So I first timed his second phase. Now, the reason why I'm putting him this high is I love the lore. Him being a son that Gwyn renounced, not even renounced, but if I understood correctly, just removed from history, removed his name. That's why his name, the Nameless King. It's just like Gwyn was obsessed. Well, Gwyn was obviously hurt by the betrayal, but he was obsessed about hiding that part of his son. Well, not even a part of his son. He was obsessed with hiding his son because I'm guessing he couldn't bear the betrayal, and the music was very good. The first phase was fun, and the fighting arena is very unique. You're shrouded by this fog, right? Quite unique from all the other bosses. Booyaka shakalaka boy. A tier feels definitely right. Oceiros, B+, again, mostly for the lore. I didn't find the fight difficult. Took me maybe a couple of, or maybe even I think I defeated him on my first attempt. Wind blades, very good weapons, it turns out. Full lore about being gone mad, seeking the power of dragons and Seath in particular. I remember this vividly, I was very creeped out by the fact that he spoke to you, both during the cinematic and the actual fight. I think it's the first boss that does that in the Dark Souls games that I played, in Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 3. That like really stood out to me. I think I'll remember Oceiros as the boss that talked. And let me tell you, the things that he was saying, I did not want to actually listen. So I quickly shut him up. Wait, phase 2, phase 2, phase 2, phase 2. B tier feels right. Old Demon King, D tier. Once more, a reskinned Asylum Demon with a little bit of a redesign, a couple more additional attacks, but ultimately something that I as a player have fought multiple times. Not going to think too much about it. Kind of a cool lore, also about it being one of the last Demon Kings. I enjoy that. Pontiff Sulyvahn, A tier. Cool design, cool movement set. I like the second phase where he gets a shadow. Very good lore. Also, similar situation like the Prince of Lothric. A lot of lore, a lot of cool lore. As I've said during the streams, he basically reminds me of the Jeffrey Epstein of Dark Souls world, just abusing a bunch of women and being this controlling shadow gray ruler almost. The highlight of midpoint of the game, I would say, the whole Irithyll area basically leads to Pontiff Sulyvahn, and I think he delivers. Irithyll, very cool area. Pontiff, very cool boss that delivers on the premise and promise of that area. Sister Friede, you waited this long, you're gonna get my judgment on Sister Friede, which is that she's the best boss in the game. Obviously, I'm talking about the DLCs here as well. The hardest boss that I fought took me 70 attempts, by far the most attempts. All the other hardest bosses took me around 30, Sister Friede, 70. Very cool movement set. I like both the design of her as a priestess, as a nun that wields a scythe, and let me tell you something, she knew how to fucking wield that scythe, okay? She put it to good use against me. The first boss that I fought in Dark Souls games that had 3 phases, after second phase I thought I was done, I thought I won. Nope. Turns out the hardest part was just ahead of me. The Black Flame attacks, very cool. And the cinematics, she gets 2 cinematics for the first phase and for the second phase. So if we are talking presentation, she has the most presentation and she has the best presentation. Oh my god. After 70 attempts, I finally did it. Jesus fucking Christ, this game, I'm gonna put a gun in my mouth and blow my fucking brains out. Sister Friede, definitely number 1. Slave Knight Gael, definitely S tier. Now I'm thinking where should I put him? Just above Champion Gundyr. Why? More variety in his fight. The way he moved, more chaotic. I like that he had crossbow that he had loaded up, ready to go. He would sometimes even shoot that while midair jumping around. It wasn't an easy boss, but wasn't too hard. It took me maybe around 10 attempts, less than 10 attempts to defeat him. And you had to like learn to fight. But as I mentioned at the start of this video, I like when you can get a hit in during the boss's combos. And you could definitely do that against Slave Knight Gael. Cool lore, once again. He is almost sort of the through line of definitely the first DLC, Ashes of Ariandel, because he literally sucks you into the first DLC. But then he's also the final boss of DLC 2. So if anything, you could say that Slave Knight Gael sorted the most important boss after you finish the base game. And a very cool design as well. I like the red hood, the wound, the gaping wound that he had at the center of his body. That was quite visually striking.
Okay, what do we do now? Phase 3? Oh, no? What the fuck?
Top 3 feels earned. Soul of Cinder. A tier, once again, mostly for the lore. We are talking story reasons, thematic reasons. Soul of Cinder being the combination of all the lords of Cinder who had kindled the flame throughout the ages, including your player's character from Dark Souls 1. Very interesting. Had a nice variety for the fight, meaning it had multiple weapons, had magic attacks. Humanoid that wields a fire weapon will get points from me. I won't surprise you at this point by saying that. And finally, you get to hear pieces of Gwyn's theme song, which is, after having completed 2 games, still I think the best theme song for a Dark Souls boss. Phase 3. Oh no, that was it. Ward of the Boreal Valley, C tier, pretty low C tier. Basically the second boss, if I remember correctly, just a precursor for Irithil, the Boreal Valley. Fun design with the frost theme, this overgrown beast in an armor. Pretty good. The fighting arena and the music, I don't remember that much. C tier feels pretty well earned for Vordt. I Lord Wolnir, a gimmicky boss, but I remember my first encounter with him when you run up to this wall of fog and his skeleton hand just like reaches out and slams down. That was a pretty cool ass moment. Loved it. The fight itself, not too hard. Again, kind of gimmicky, interesting-ish lore, and he is somewhat unique. So that's where he gets the points to be put into C tier. And finally, Yhorm the Giant, the biggest boss, quite literally, meaning in his physical stature, saved for last. I'm gonna put him in C tier, in the middle of C tier. Again, mostly because of 2 reasons. I do like his design, as I said, the biggest boss, and I do like his weapon. The weapon looks cool, but the biggest amounts of points Yhorm gets is for the lore. The fact that he was an old-timey friend of Siegfried, of Katarina, and I did summon him to fight Yhorm and to fulfill a promise to his old friend. The most personal boss fight of the whole series, maybe even, at least felt personal. So the stakes, stakes were personal, while the man, the enemy, the boss himself was actually huge. Even besides the personal lore and the personal stakes, I found the surrounding lore of him being the giant that tried to extinguish the flame in the profane capital. I found that also quite interesting and something that has stuck with me about Yhorm. But yes, that is the tier list done. Quickly scanning anything I will look through if I want to make any small adjustments before finalizing the list. You know what? I'll put Pontiff against Lothric because I did enjoy that fight maybe just a little bit more. You know what? No, I'm not gonna do it. For the last second, I thought about maybe putting Darkeater Midir into B tier. No, I'm gonna stick with C. Thank you for watching the video. If you have any thoughts about my own ranking, again, a very personal ranking, please let me know your thoughts down below.